Our topic is forensic question document examination. Document defined. Documents refers to any materials which contain marks, symbol, or sign, either visible or partially visible, which furnish information or ultimately convey meaning to another person. Document is in the form of pencil, ink, writing, or printing on paper. Question defined refers to any materials which someone issue had been raised or which is under scrutiny. Question document defined. A document is questioned because its origin, its content, or the circumstance and story regarding its production arouse suspicion as to its genuineness or may adversely scrutinize simply because it displeases someone. A question document is signature, handwriting, typewriting, or other mark whose source or authenticity in dispute or doubtful. Letters, check, driver's license, contract, wills, voters registration, passport, petition, treating letters, suicide notes, and lottery tickets are the most common question documents. At nandito yung mga iba't ibang example natin na kagaya ng handwriting, signature, contract, typewriting, driver's license. At may papakita akong isang video na pwede nyong i-testing sa inyong mga lisensya kung peke ba to o tunay.
Yung license po ninyo is suspicious po ang driver's license po ninyo. Ayun, ito lalabanan ko po kayo. Pag inilawang ko to, ang lumabas na kulay dyan is violet, free kayo. Pero pag dilawang lumabas na ilaw dyan,
hello, bakit nagkaganon sir?
pasensyahan po tayo ha.
Sige sir, ano ba yan?
Ito tayo sa maliwanag, sa madilim.
Ano ba yan? Dilaw. Patay tayo. Bakit nagkaganon?
Ibig sabihin po, ang driver's license ninyo is fake. Pagka ganyan. Ngayon, tignan niyo po ang original driver's license
Sir, may idea ako. Ano kaya yan? Ba't nagkaganon?
Ito po ang original na driver's license. Ang driver's license po ninyo, ayan. Ito ang original. Kita nyo?
Oo.
Violet, di ba?
Oo nga sir.
Ito yung lisensya mo ganito, ayan. So, ibig sabihin, ang driver's license ninyo is fake. Ngayon,
The next naman ay the history of document examination. The science of document examination as we know it's today dates back in only to around the turn of the century. Its development both in the field and its acceptance by the courts are largely due to the efforts of an American Albert S. Osborne, and suspect documents are still considered by contemporary document examiner to be the definitive works on the subject. In the book, The Law of Disputed and Forged Documents, J. Newton Baker states that forgery was practiced from the earliest times in every country where writing was the medium of communication. This distinction between forensic document examiner and graphologist grapho or analysis. Forensic document examiner studies scientifically the details and elements of document in order to identify their source or discover other facts concerning them. Document examiner are often referred to as handwriting identification experts. But today, the work has outgrown this latter title and involves problems other than just the examination of handwriting. Aspects of document evidence may include handwriting, handprinting, typewriter, ribbons, printers, photocopiers, facsimiles, check writer, impression, indented writing, watermarks, inks, erasure, alteration, obliteration, turn edge, safety paper, charred paper, graphic arts, and matches. Graphology, graphoanalysis. In the distinct sense, examine handwriting and interpret the character personality of the writer by the traits left behind in their written lines. They do not, by definition, compare handwriting to determine authorship or genuineness of the documents. And next, question document timeline. 1609, the first treatise on systematic document examination was published by Francis Demele of France. 1882, Gilbert Thompson, a railroad builder with the U.S. Geological Survey in the New Mexico, put his own thumbprint on which cheats to safeguard himself from forgeries. 1810, the first recorded use of question document analysis created in Germany. A chemical test for particular ink dye was applied to document I know as Konigin Haschirit. 1894, Alfred Dreyfus of France was convicted of treason based on mistake handwriting identification by Bertillon. 1910, Albert S. Osborne, an American and arguably the most influential document examiner, published question documents.
Next is Unit 2, the scope and limitation of document examination. These historical and legal backgrounds that ultimately the document examination or document evidence being accepted by the courts came about due the reliability and reportability of the results obtained by the bona fide practitioners in examination of documents. Yon, sabi nga daw po dito, dapat daw po yung examination, yung mga document examination or document evidence ay dapat daw po makatotohanan at dapat po na exam daw po ito nung maigi para kasi yun lang daw po yung tinatanggap sa ating courts. Next is document examination. Covers a variety of subjects including the identification of handwriting signatures, typewriting, and printed matter. Second, covered din ito yung distinguishing forgery from genuineness. Yes. Third is analyzing inks, papers, and other substances that are combined into documents. Fourth is the detection of addition and substitution on a document. Fifth is the historian of the decipherment of erase and highlighted writing. Yan. Ito daw yung mga iba pang cover ng document examinations. And the majority of work undertaken by the document examiners revolves around the identification of handwriting and signature. Early document examiners were known as handwriting experts, as their work centered largely on handwriting and signature examination. Nowadays, document examiners are trained in all facts of document examinations. In some overseas countries, once an examiner has completed basic training, that person may be specialized in particular areas such as typewriting and ink analysis. Ang next natin ay areas and question document examination. We have question document examiner, historical dating, fraud investigator, paper and specialist, forgery specialist, handwriting analyst, and typewriting analyst. Dito po sa question document examination, this is the document examiner analyze the question document is capable or more just question authorship limited only in their access to the laboratory equipment. Ang second po ay historical dating. Historical dating, this involves the verification of age and worth document objects, sometimes done by the document examiner and can be complicated as carbon 14 dating. Sabi po dito sa historical dating, na-exam daw po nila kung gaano na po katagal yung isang document, yung isang bagay. Fraud This is often overlaps with that the document examiner and focuses on the money trail and criminal intent. 4 is paper and specialist. This is the public-private expert who date, type, source, and catalog various types of papers, watermarks, ink, printing, copy, machines, computer, etc. using chemical methods. Forgery specialist. This is the public-private experts who analyze altered, obliterated, change the doctored documents and photos using infrared lighting, expensive spectrography equipment, or digital enhancement techniques. Next is handwriting analysis. This is usually psychology expert who access personality traits from handwriting samples, also called graphologists. Forensic statistics refers to the same purpose but looking systematic spelling, word choice, syntax, and phraseology. Next is typewriting analysis. Next is classes of question document. First is document with question signatures. Second, documents containing alleged fraudulent alteration. Next is holographic document question is disputed. And documents question as to their authentics. Fifth is documents that are disputed because of the materials used in their production. 6. Documents are questioned as to their typewriting. 7. Document or writing investigated because it is alleged that they identify some person through handwriting. And last is genuine document extraneously or prudently attacked. And these are in Unit 2. Ngayon, may papakita kami pong example sa inyo about dito sa Unit 2.
23. Handling and preservation of question documents. Like all other evidence, considerable care are necessary in the handling of question documents to maintain the integrity of the evidence and to satisfy legal chain of custody requirements. Do not fold, cut, or tear. Do not mark or write in question documents. Do not use pins, staples, clips, or tape on documents. Do not make perforation in documents. Do not punch holes. Do not make any new folds in documents. If it necessary to unfold or open a document for inspection, remember how it was folded. This may be important later. Once unfolded, keep open if practical in proper size and envelope. If you have jigsaw puzzle or torn pieces of document, do not paste or tape them together. Do not process for fingerprints until after the document examination. Do not submit do not carry disputed documents loosely in the pocket. Do not dust document with fingerprints powder. Documents can be photographed and chemically processed in the laboratory. Do not allow handling of unprotected document by anyone. Show others only a photograph or photocopy. Send pieces into the document examiner for a reconstructions, and he will photograph or photocopy the results for you. Hand deliver or mail by registered mail. Keep accurate chain of custody records. That this date collected by whom, date sent to laboratory, store in lock file to prevent unauthorized access to etc. Precautions for the document examiner. Preserve integrity of the evidence. Do not mutilate, fold, staple, clip, etc. Photograph condition of document upon receipt. Initial and date all documents in inconspicuous location. This initial and date all documents in a inconspicuous location. This provides instant proof that you examine the documents when providing testimony in court. Do not make any erasures on documents. Do not trace over question document. Do not underscore or encircle words on question document. If notes are necessary, make photocopy bond place notations on photocopy. Do not touch document with a pencil, pen, or other point instrument. Do not write or otherwise mark on documents. Small identifying marks may be made on the back bottom corner. Descriptions of the matter should be written on separate sheet of paper. If any writing is to be made on protective cover, it should be done before document inserted. Prevent unauthorized access by storing in lock vault. Prevent undue exposure to light. Prevent undue handling. Return documents by hand deliver or registered mail. Keep accurate records. All these precautions by the investigator and document examiner are essential not only to satisfy legal requirements but also to prevent the destruction of valuable evidence.
Now let's go over what is chain of custody. A chain of custody is actually the way you document and preserve evidence from the time that you actually started the cyber forensics investigation to the time that the actual evidence is presented at court or even internally within the organization to determine what actually happened, right? And even perform some type of attribution. Now, it is extremely important that you be able to show clear documentation of everything that you did whenever you document the collected evidence and preserve that evidence, right? That includes how the evidence was collected, again, when it was actually collected, how it was transported, how it was tracked, how it was stored, and who had access to the evidence and how it was actually accessed, right? Now, if you fail to maintain proper chain of custody, it is likely that you cannot use that evidence in court. And it is also important to know that how to delete or dispose evidence after an investigation, right? So when you collect evidence, you must first protect it and protect its integrity, right? This involves making sure that nothing is added to the evidence and that nothing is actually deleted or destroyed. And this is all known as evidence preservation, right? Now, a method used for evidence preservation is actually to only work with a copy of the evidence. In other words, not directly copying with the actual evidence itself, right? So as we cover in earlier lessons, this involves creating an image of a hard drive or any storage device that you actually are collecting the evidence from. Now, there are several forensics tools available in the market, as we mentioned before. These are a couple of most popular tools. EnCase, which we had before, and also Access Data Forensics Tool is another one, right? That can also help you collect evidence. So throughout the course, I'll give you some examples. Of course, some of these are commercial tools, but just some examples for you to actually become familiar with, right? Now, another methodology used in evidence preservation is actually to use a write-protected storage device, right? In other words, that the storage device that you're investigating or using should immediately be write-protected before it's actually imaged, and it should be labeled to include, several things like the investigator's name, the date when the image was actually created, and the case name and number, if applicable, in the case of a case investigation, and you may actually have an identifier for that specific case, right? Now, you also must prevent electronic static or any other discharge from damaging or erasing the data, right? So special evidence bags are, anti-static bags that can be used to store digital, devices and digital evidence, right? This is very important because you have to actually prevent electrostatic discharge, or ESD, and any other electrical discharges from damaging your evidence. Some organizations even have a cyber forensics labs, right, that control access to only authorized users and investigators. One method often used involves construction what we call a Faraday cage, right? And this is a cage that is often built out of a mesh conducting material that actually prevents electromagnetic energy from entering into the cage and also escaping from that cage. And this actually prevents devices from communicating via things like Wi-Fi or cellular signals and any other type of communications, electronic communications, right? Transporting the evidence to the forensics lab or any other place, including the courthouse, has to be done very, very carefully, right? So it is critical that the chain of custody, right, and evidence preservation be maintained during the transport of that evidence, right? So whenever you transport the evidence, you should strive to secure it in a lockable container, right? Somewhere that actually, any other person actually cannot access, right?
The next is Unit 4, Instrument, Apparatus, Materials used in question documents. Scientific instrument, microscope, Stereoscopic microscope and comparison microscope. Microscope is an instrument which makes it impossible to see physical evidence directly that otherwise may be impossible. The microscope serves to discover and show the physical fact by direct view of the thing itself. The stereoscopic microscope provides a 3D-dimensional enlargement which is important when searching for identifying characteristics in typewriting samples, cross-strokes, erasures, alteration, and other problems that require magnification. The comparison microscope allows side-by-side simultaneous comparison of question and unknown samples under study. At nandito yung mga example natin ng mga stereoscope microscope, magnifying glass, shadow graph, camera, ruler, and protractor. At may papakita ko sa inyo na isang video ulit na kung paano siya ginagamit.
Some of the tools that we use as document examiners. There's a digital microscope that we use. This is an example of one. This is from a company called Zarbico in New Jersey. It's called MyScope. It's a very high-end digital microscope. It has a lot of capabilities. It allows us to hold that over a document and capture the image right on the computer. Some of the images that I'll be showing to you I captured using that MyScope. We use optical microscopes. These are what you might call a standard microscope. On here, it has a boom, what's called a boom arm, and what the boom arm does is it allows us to hold the lens or the eyepiece over the document rather than close, so it gives a better view. We have what are called IR and UV scopes to allow us to use ultraviolet light and infrared light to look at a document. We have just a little loop. Many of you who have done photography or other type of examinations where you need to be able to look at things closely, you may be familiar with a loop which magnifies 10, 15, 20 times. There's what's called a NIST, National Institutes of Standards and Technology, is what NIST stands for. They set up what all of our what is a meter, what's an inch, and so on. And there's standard rulers that are graded down to 1/64th of an inch. We use those in order to measure our writing, so we can do comparative analysis. Photoshop. Adobe Photoshop is one of the most powerful tools that we use. I'll be showing you some images where I called up, I shot the image using a MyScope microscope that saves it to the computer. Then I call it up in Adobe Photoshop, and in Adobe Photoshop you can enlarge the image, you can change the color, you can take one signature and overlay it on top of another signature so you can see how similar they are. It's very, very powerful software. A computer, well, obviously we use computers. We use computers for Adobe Photoshop. We use computers for a whole host of different things. We use it for writing our invoices. We use it for writing our reports. We use a flatbed scanner. And one of the reasons we use a flatbed scanner is that we want to be able to take the document and store it into the computer and then be able to bring it into Photoshop and manipulate it, clip out the signatures, or what we call crop out the signature. We want to be able to change the color. We want to do a lot of things to the document without destroying it. So when we store the image using a flatbed scanner, it captures that, and we can bring it into the computer and play with it and even mess it up. If you mess it up, you throw it away and scan it again. There's no harm done to the original document. This thing called ESDA, Electrostatic Detection Apparatus. It's used for what's called indented writing. So that you can see one of the things we look for is, let's say you write on a pad. When you write on a pad, it puts an impression on the page below it. One of the things that document examiners will sometimes do is get a copy of that pad and then look at the indentations on the page below that'll tell them what was really written there. Or was there something else written and a page torn off? It's used for collecting evidence. They're very expensive. They cost, I think the base price is around $7,000 and they go up to like 20 or more. And then the VSC. But the VSC is looking at the documents using ultraviolet and infrared light. Both of these devices are made by a company called Foster Freeman. They're a British company. They're exceedingly powerful. At the National Association of Document Examiners conference this year in Montreal in May, there's going to be a seminar on how to use both of these devices, the ESDA and the VSC. It's visual spectral comparator. That's what a VSC is. Used a fair amount. There's a lot of research. There's a lot of research being done with the ESDA. One of the more complex problems to solve in document examination is to determine if you have lines crossing each other, which one was written first. It's a very complex problem. There's a lot of literature on it. The ESDA can be used to help solve that problem, so can the VSC. And interestingly enough, if you have something that's written and you have a signature, say, that's written and part of the signature goes over the original writing, the question is, which came first? Did someone take the signature and then write something to make it look like that person wrote it? Or did the person write it and put a signature on there? So there's a lot of question that comes into play, and it's not a very easy situation to solve, or problem to solve. I've even put together some samples where I know the sequence of the writing, that pen A was used before pen B, and you look at it under the microscope and it looks like pen B was used before pen A because of the type of inks that were used.
The next, handwriting protractor. It is a special rule protractor designed for the easy and accurate measuring of the slant of writing. Typewriting protractor. This is designed to show the exact abnormal slant certain letter in typewriting. Uniform ruled squares on glass, letter and number. This is glass with uniform square that can be placed over an elegant forgery and a model from which it was traced or over two alleged tracing from the same original to show suspicious identities that may exist or in the small size may be used to compare to a large typewriting letters. Typewriting test plate on glass for alignment and line spacing tests. Another useful instrument for typewriting examination, which consists of glass carrying accurately graduated fine line, square, 10 to inch, dot spacing or ordinary typewriting. Angle measurement. Angle measure. An instrument device for the purpose of measuring angles in handwriting, typewriting. Transmitted light table. A flood of light is something all at once thrown a problem when investigated in this way, and every document that is suspected shall be seen through in this manner. Typewriter. A typewriter is a machine that can reproduce printed characters on paper. It has keyboard containing the letters of the alphabet, number, common punctuation marks, and various controls. The first practical typewriter was developed by Christopher Latham Scholes and was patented in 1868. Computer. A computer is an apparatus built to perform routine calculation with speed, reliability, and ease. Checker writing machine. It is a device which intended to prevent either erasure or alteration of entries on cheque. Cheque writers identification. Cheque writers, also known as check protectors, may be identified as two manufacturers by its mechanism and typeface design, and individualized by accidental characteristic resulting from damage and wear and tear. Scientific approach in document analysis. Forensic XV410 is the only commercially available forensic digital imaging spectrograph for both large and micro scale document examination. Forensic XP410 imaging spectrometers together with MST1 spectral scanner represent a new generation of non-destructive tools for authenticity determination of different types of documents and handwriting. Key features: non-destructive analysis of question document present of significantly equal but physically different features. High resolution color infrared digital imaging. Spectral imaging of absorption, reflectance, transmittance, and fluorescence of question document using hyperspectral technique. Powerful ×20 zoom optics suitable for micro and micro size documents. Unlimited size document in auto stitch mode of operation. Advanced online digital signal and image processing for direct analysis of documents for their original and writing line sequence indication. And next is electrostatic detection. The modern well-equipped forensic laboratory employs electrostatic detection recovery intended writing. The equipment is referred to as an ESDA for electrostatic detection apparatus. By employing the ESDA, independent writing may be recovered 3, 4, or even more page below original writing. Ayun yung example ng electrostatic detection. And next naman is materials used in the production of document. Paper is a sheet of interlaced fiber, usually cellulose fibers from plants, but sometimes from cloth rags or other fibrous materials, that is formed by pulping the fiber and causing them to lap or mat to form a solid surface. The majority of documents are written, typed, or printed on paper. It inside that paper was invented by the Chinese more than 2,000 years ago, but the knowledge of its manufacture was slow to spread onto Europe. The next is the development of paper manufacture. The invention of paper is generally attributed to a Chinese court official, Carl Lan, in about 105, although the Chinese had probably made paper from silk fiber even earlier. Development of paper making machinery. The first mechanical paper making process was invented in 1798 by Nicolas Louis Robert, a Frenchman who devised a machine with an endless wire mesh web that as it was turned by hand deep into a vat of pulp, lifting out of pulp layer. Ito yung example kung paano siya ginagawa. Next, the paper making process. The paper making is a continuous process, unbroken line of production that begins with the tree and which the cut sheet of paper. Ayun yung process kung paano ginagawa ang isang papel. Next is pulp processing. The principal function of pulping are to dissolve the lining that hold the cellulose fiber together and separate the fiber. Ayun yung paggagawa naman kung paano siya sinisimulan. Paper machines. The two most common machine is current use are the Bordiniere and the Rider machine. Both produce paper sheet from pulp in continuous process at speed that may reach more than 800 meters and 800 yards per minute for Bordiniere pulp and water. Mixture flow as control rate through a head box and onto a moving wire mesh screen. As the screen moves away from the head box, various suction devices drain water from the pulp, leaving as a sheet of matted pulp that is still very wet. A wire covered roll holding a wire design and called the dandy roll may travel over the surface to impressing and watermark. Finishing as it leaves the paper forming machine. The dry papers is rolled onto large wheels. The rolled papers may be slit wheels required cut into sheet trimmed back package. Ito naman yung top na pag natapos na siya. Acid paper. Many of the sizing used to improve the feels and printability of papers. Acid over time causes the cellulose fibers that continuous paper to generated. Ito na yung pag nagkaroon na siya ng acid paper. Nagkakaroon na siya ng iba't ibang design o kaya kulay. Watermaking. Watermaking is technique used to create a pattern or marks in sheet of paper that visible the sheet is held to a light. What can be determined from watermarks? Determination of time period paper was made. Determine where paper was made. Trace unusual papers. Kinds. Papyrus from about 2400 or earlier that people of Egypt, Palestine, Syria, and southern Europe used the feet of the sedge of Cyperus papyrus to make writing materials as papyrus. Ito yung ginagamit nilang parang papel na kanilang sinusulatan. Parchment. A writing material is made from the skin primarily of sheep, kelp, or goats. Parchment was probably development in the Middle East more or less contemporaneously with papyrus. Ito na may gawa sa, sabi nga sa sheep, calves, or goats. Gawa naman siya sa balat para maging parang isang papel. Ink. The earlier kinds of ink was India ink. It was made from salt carbon mixed with water. This ink does not penetrate the paper, can be scraped up with a knife. What can be determined from ink? Examination. Determine if two ink are similar or different determine the age of ink deposited on the paper. Writing instrument. The ballpoint pen is the newest and most popular type of ink writing instrument. A very few were made in Europe before 1935. A document could have been written with a ballpoint at this time, but it is not very probable. Kinds. Quill pens. Quill pens were made from the wing feather or the ghost swan primary, although feather from other birds were also used. Ito yung parang ginagamit natin ni Sir Sal na feather na ballpen, ginagamit sa pansulat. Steel nibs, metal pen points or nibs has been used occasionally in Europe, but efficient manufacturing method was devised to produce a uniform, reliable, and expensive points until 1830s. Fountain pens. The fountain pen is incorporating its own ink reservoir. It's an 1884 invention of an American Lewis E. Waterman. Ballpoint pens. The first patent for ballpoint writing tip was issued in 1888 to an American. John H. Loud's pen was designed to write on root surface. His concept, coupled with advance in ball grading measuring technology, allowed Laszlo Biro, Hungarian, to make a ballpoint pen that wrote easily on paper. Pencil. A pencil is a device for writing, marking, or drawing. It consists of core of solid marking substance contained in a holder. Ito yung konting example. Example of writing instrument. At hanggang doon na lang po.